Hi everybody, today we're going to learn about optical illusion and we're going to do it with square shapes. We're going to be creating these optical illusions by shading, and the shading will change in value, which means the lightness or the darkness of the shading is going to change depending on the direction, depending on the movement in the picture. And what that's going to do is it's going to create an illusion as if something is round or curved or sharp or flat. So the first thing we're going to do is get our pencils out, and you can use an ebony or a number 2 pencil. Either one is fine. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to imagine that there is a line dividing these two spaces. Well, I wanted to change pencils. So here I am using an ebony pencil. So we're going to shade up and down. You can do this by shading in small circles, or you can make scribbles. It doesn't really matter, just as long as the area is filled in consistently and that the shading essentially changes in value in a straight up and down manner, because that is going to provide the illusion that we're looking for. So what we do on one side, we're going to do on the other. So the edges are going to be shaded in very darkly. They're going to be the darkest portions of this particular shape, and it's going to create this really kind of cool effect of this square turning into almost a tube shape or something that has a shine highlight on it. So the closer we get to the middle, the lighter our gradient is going to be, or the lighter our values are going to be. So once again, on the edges, it's going to be very dark, completely filled in. And then as we move to the center, we're going to ease up on that pressure to shade more lightly. The harder you press, the darker the value with pencil. The lighter you press, the lighter the value. So we're getting very, very, very soft in the middle, barely touching the paper to create these really, really, really light values. Going back and forth very carefully to continue that, and then making sure that our gradient is very smooth. So going back in and making a nice, clean transition between the two. Making sure our edges are very dark, because if we don't get this portion right, it's not going to give the illusion that we're kind of going for. So as we're doing this, being very, very careful. And once again, it doesn't matter how you shade, but now we are getting that effect, that tube effect or that highlight effect, continuing to refine as we go along. And what you're starting to see is how a square is starting to look curved. It's a really cool illusion, and it's very good practice with the shading techniques we learned last time. So we go from dark to light to dark again, but you can actually do multiples of this in the same picture. So you can put dark to light and then light again. For this square, we're going to shade each square differently. So on one square, we're going to shade from light to dark, and the next one from dark to light, imagining that there's a center point between the two where the transition happens. So in this square on the outside, I'm going to shade in darkly. And then once I get to the middle, I'm going to shade lightly. So I get that really light gradient. It doesn't really matter what technique you use for shading, as long as the value, the gradient and the transition is nice and smooth. So I'm kind of scribbling in. I'm not really focused on how well things are, how the surface appears, because I actually like a little bit of texture in my shading. So we're going to go from dark to light all the way across that square, or the outside portion of that square. It kind of looks like a frame. So dark all the way on the edge, and as we're getting towards the other edge, or the opposite edge, we're going to go lighter and lighter and lighter. So pressing more softly as we go along. And we're going to have this square, which is going to have a gradient in it, or let's just say a frame that has this gradient in it. And once that's all nice and blended out, and we're blending with pencils. Some people use tortillons. You can use blending tools, and that works too. But this is what we're trying to really achieve here, is pencil control. So doing it manually without using a blending tool really kind of builds up those hand muscles for control. Now for the next square frame, we're going to do opposite. So the opposite edge is going to be very, very dark. So making sure that once again that space is completely filled up and opaque, pushing very hard to get that dark value. And then as we're going to hit that middle point, we're going to shade more lightly as it goes to the edge. And once again, this is the opposite of the previous square. So being very careful on those edges. And then very light where it interacts that dark. And think about it like the other assignment, where it's almost like a checkerboard. Light meets dark and dark meets light. And that's really what's going to give you that really cool effect, that optical illusion, where a flat circle starts to look round or curved and show real depth. And so for the last square, once again doing the opposite, where the darkest portion touches light, and then getting light as we go towards that darker edge, like a checkerboard. And then you end up having this really, really cool exchange between dark to light, light to dark, but instead of it just looking like a bunch of random shapes interacting, we start to have something that's like a curve. So this is what the shape is going to look like when it's done. So it's more like a curved shape than a square shape. And that is the end of the second optical illusion. The third optical illusion is we're going to be shading on this diagonal line from dark to light and light to dark. And instead of going at an angle, we're going to use the point that's up and down, and it's going to get dark from the edge of one triangle and lighter as it goes towards the middle. And this gives this really cool almost metallic effect. So I'm going to finish this and you'll be able to see what it looks like when it's done. So at the end of this, we have dark to light transitions on this square. And on this square, we have that dark to light, which makes it look like a tube. On this block right here, you can do the same thing, dark to light, or you can do it twice, dark to light twice. On this side, instead of going right to left dark, you can do it the opposite way. And then for this one, you can switch sides, you can add a different angle just to add some interest.